Hey everybody, welcome. I'm Romi Hill, and I'm the designer behind Designs by Romi. And I'm really happy to be with you today live. And everybody else who's gonna watch later, welcome. Today I am gonna be talking about mostly about my new pattern, Broken Trails. And I changed the name of this pattern like 20 bazillion times because nothing ever just seemed right to me. It's this one over here. I don't have a mirror view of myself in the broadcasting software, so it's really like trying to figure out where I am. Anyway, so it's over the shoulder over here. That is the smaller of the two samples that I knit. And then I actually started knitting another one and, well, another couple. I tried a really bulky yarn, which was kind of fun. And now I am trying this really pretty single from Julie Asselin, and it's just this beautiful wool. So I'm having a really nice time with it. And it's thinner. It's like a heavy lace weight and like a light fingering heavy lace weight. And I love the color. It's one of my favorite colors. So very excited. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see you there in the comments. I love seeing you there. Okay, so then I also have my essential bucket hat all blocked. And then just a couple, I'm going to go over a few different stitches and techniques and stuff that are in the Broken Trails pattern. If you were going to knit it straight off, you probably noticed that I revised it a bazillion times. I'm so sorry about that. I was just having a day when I released this pattern. And then since there were mistakes in there, I did not want you to start knitting it immediately. I was really afraid that if you started, then you would get to the point where like you were, you know, halfway done or something like that, and it would you'd have to rip it out or something. So that's why I just kept updating it. Like when somebody told me that there was an error, my guardian angel told me that there was an error. Um, I like did it immediately. So sorry if I just kept sending out like the two updates. Um, but I didn't want anybody to get stuck and then have to rip a bunch of stuff out. So that's why that happened. Anyway, so here is my other version of this. So yeah, and I will talk a little bit more about that later. So the first thing I wanted to show you was my blocked hat here. So this is my blocked essential bucket hat. Um, so it looks different, like it's it's pretty different from how it looked unblocked. So you can see like I blocked it so that the brim kind of sticks out because I like that kind of that brim around here. And a lot of people talk about how when designers and magazines take photographs of projects, they pin it or like they do something else to it like that. You can see I still have my boo-boo up here. So, um, so I just wanted you to see this on because the way that this brim is engineered, if you block it out the way, and I showed it in a reel on Instagram, and I think I also put it in a YouTube short. But if I didn't, I will I will put it up later. So I just wanted everybody to see what it actually looks like when it blocks out because it's not pinned, like nothing was done to it at all. This is just the way these braids around the bottom and everything, that's just the way it will make your um, hat look if you do this like from the pattern. Um, so, and I haven't actually done all of the insides here. So this is the next thing I have to do. I need to sort of secure the inside. And last time I showed you what that looks like with my handy dandy little needle felter. And you can see here, let me transition this over so you can see up close. You can see here, like I needle felted this little area in here and it did not come out. So, and this is kind of interesting. I did not wash this in hot water, but because this is feltable wool, it is a non-superwash wool, and it is an unspun, this sort of sticks together. So this is really super easy to felt. Like this type of unspun wool here is really, really easy to felt. So stay away from agitating it unless you want it to shrink a little bit. And then up in here, I'm just going to needle felt these in and then trim everything down. Yay! Okay. Janet, you were saying Julie was at Hill Country Weavers. Yes, they are so sweet. And that's actually the last Hill Country Weavers retreat that I was at. It was the last one right as the pandemic was hitting. She was there too, and that's where I got that yarn actually. So she's such a sweetheart, and her husband is, and so yeah, I'm finally using this stuff. And if you get to knit with her beautiful wool, she has some of these are dyed in the wool, and they are just lovely, lovely yarns, and she's a sweetheart. So, like, it's a win-win. Okay, let's see. You know what? So I see people are talking about Philadelphia, and I may be teaching in Philadelphia next year. So if I am, I hope you'll come and say hi. So I can't say anything yet about what it is because I don't think that the event has been announced yet. But watch out. Okay. So I just want to thank you so much again for being here. It really is nice to see you in the comments, and like I have this. I'm actually kind of an introvert, so I know like if we've met in person, I can carry on a conversation and look more extroverted, but I'm actually kind of an introvert. So um, it's really nice to see you here. Okay, so let's switch over here. Okay, so I'm just going to show you up close here how this works out. So you can see if you have started knitting, you can see how these are sort of offset here. So if you have started knitting this, and I know some people have, you'll see this coming up as being a little bit offset. So even though it looks like it's sort of a different, that it might be a different chart or something like that, this is because of the short rows. So each wedge has short rows as it goes along. Um, and you can see it's less offset over on the small side here. And then because of the way the short rows come together, um, they get sort of more and more offset as you go across in the pattern. And that is what gives it that sort of broken look to it. So, and then over on this side here, you'll see they they get pretty, they get more offset. Like they're still not hugely offset, but a little bit more. So Judy says, I have a skein of Miss Babs. Evening in Berlin that is pretty variegated. Yes, it would totally work. The cool thing about this is because it's done in wedges like this, you're going to have the colors more broken up. So this I think is pretty variegated. This is a UV reactive yarn, and you can see here the splotches of color. So this is a fairly variegated yarn, and you can still see the patterning. So let me hold this up. So you can still see the pattern in there, even though it's a variegated yarn. That patterning still comes out, and I don't think that it really interferes with each other either. So I think everything, yeah, I think everything is probably going to work for this. And then Joy, you're asking if I'll be linking the live to the Ravelry pattern page. Yes, it's already linked. So there's a link in the pattern page, so you can come back. And then I will, I think there's a couple of shorts that I may link up there too. I did link a YouTube short over there that shows you how to do this little stitch on the edge here. So you can also access that from the pattern page. Yeah, so don't worry, it's all good. So, okay, let's go on here. Alrighty, so you can see here, this is basically the construction here. So you're going to be casting on across here, and then each wedge is worked. So no wedge except that first one goes all the way to the edge here. The subsequent wedges just come up, um, like they get farther and farther away from this first point over here. So the more wedges you add, the less triangular it looks. So the smaller one that I have behind me, the red one, looks more triangular. Like if I hold it up, it looks more triangular. So it's like this part right here. So that it looks more triangular, and then as it gets bigger, it's going to start kind of curving around like this. So the larger you make it, the more curvy this is going to look. And I'm actually doing the Julie's yarn has over 700 yards. So I'm actually kind of doing an experiment to see how curvy I can make it. So I think it's going to be pretty curved all the way around. And then let's see. Um, okay, I just want to make sure I'm not missing any questions. Okay. Alrighty, so this pattern uses German short rows. And that is how you're going to be moving from wedge to wedge. So that's how you create the wedge to begin with, is you are making German short rows. And each wedge, let me backtrack. My favorite thing about wedges is that you can take a look and see how much yarn your first wedge uses, and then you can extrapolate and get an idea of subsequent wedges and how much yarn those will use. So on this particular one, you can see here, this has a reverse stockinette I-cord bind off. So this is going to take a lot of yarn at the end. And so for for this one, which had 12 wedges, it took probably about 75% of the amount of yarn that a wedge took. So when you're weighing and you're not sure like how many wedges you can get, definitely take that into consideration. And then um, May asked if it's the same construction as shard. It is. Shard is also wedges. These are a little bit different. Shard has like more of a, more of a shorter and thicker wedge. So it gives you a little bit of a different shape to it. This one is more elongated, so it has a little bit more of a swoop to it. So they're very similar. I like doing stuff with wedges because I think you can do all sorts of cool constructions with them. And like when the wedges come together, they give you some really interesting results. So, okay. All right, so let's take a look over here on the This is the cast on edge. So I just cast on using a knitted cast on. You can cast on in any way you like. So it doesn't necessarily have to be knitted. If you like the look of a different cast on, that is totally and completely fine. And if you look really, really, really close over here, you can see where there is that is a German short row right there. And they're just sort of hidden in the fabric here. Okay. Alrighty. So I've seen a couple of comments where people say this is easier to follow with written instructions, and I totally get that. Definitely get that because the chart is a little funky sometimes. Excuse me, but let's take a look at the chart. So mostly in here, I did this chart so you can figure out where you are with respect to where your wedges were before. So I have labeled markers here, and I've called out in the written instructions all the different markers that need to be placed. This first one here is a clip-on marker, so it can be removed later, unless I mean, you certainly can leave some there if you want to, but this is a clip-on in case when you want to go back and remove it. So I have these little repeat areas so that this chart will actually fit on a page. Otherwise, it is incredibly long and really difficult to read. So between each marker here, between like 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, 3, 4, and 4 and 5, there are 24 stitches between each one of these, each pair of these markers. So even though these actually look like they are smaller here, you can see like this one is repeated 5 times, 4, 2, and 3, and 2 times here. And that is just so that I could actually get this whole thing on the chart and you would be able to compare where the markers were on your last wedge to where the markers are going to go on your next wedge. So, and then Di asks, would I need to do a gauge swatch over some of the pattern or would stocking stitch be okay? Definitely stocking stitch would be totally fine. And because of the way that this is designed, if you don't want to do a gauge swatch, I would suggest just weighing your yarn ahead of time and then doing a wedge and figuring out from that how much yarn you have used for the wedge and how many wedges you can do. You don't really have to do a gauge swatch. It's mostly to make sure that you have enough yarn. So in this case, though, because of the structure, you can actually just go by what kind of fabric you like. So if you like the fabric you're getting, then that's what's important. And then you can figure out from that how many wedges. Okay, so this this chart right here is a what you see is what you knit. So when you're looking at this and you look over here at the wrong side rows, when you see a purl stitch, you are going to knit a purl stitch. You're not going to reverse this. So this first chart here does not reflect the front of the work. It's just completely, it's like a visual representation of written instructions. So I know that there are lots of people out there who like to see this type of chart. So I have started making sure that this is also in all of my patterns. So this is basically, this is a traditional charting style where it reflects the front of your piece of work. So where you see this, where you see these, you're going to reverse these. So these are actually pearls, and it comes out and it shows a stockinette stitch. And then over here, these are actually knit stitches on the wrong side. And this area right here is a garter stitch. So this reflects the texture of the front of your shawl. In all other respects, the charts are the same. And you can see down here, this is marked. This is how you can tell if it's a different type of charting. So on the right side knit, wrong side purl, when you see that, then you know that it is a chart that reflects the front of your work, and that you're going to have to, when you're on the wrong side, you're going to have to reverse the symbols in the chart. And then up here, I have a little blurb that talks about that. So my suggestion is, because on each wedge, you're going to be sort of changing marker placement. If you are using um, your, your written instructions, you probably still want to take a look at the chart and make sure that everything is lining up where it should line up. So for instance, this actually does line up correctly across here. So this is how it's going to be offset along here. So there are two, this is worked 2 times here, and then this is going to be offset right there. So when you're working, when you're using the written instructions and you start on this row here, that's row 19, definitely take a look at the chart and make sure that your placement actually does reflect on the chart properly. Okay, so let's take a look at the symbols. Okay, so another thing I've started doing in my patterns is to make sure that everybody realizes that all of the instructions for the stitches will assume that the stitches are mounted on the left needle with the right or leading leg in front and the left leg in back. Because I know that there are a lot of people out there who are actually combination knitters or have an Eastern mount, which is reversed from this. So if you are a combination knitter, then you know that these instructions need to be edited so that you're able to get the same result. So I'm just going to show you all of these different stitches in here. And okay, so bind off, cast on, those are I'm not too worried about this, but I do want to show you a German short row. Okay, so to do a German short row, you're going to work to the place where it says to stop, and then you're going to turn over. So at this point, you have your yarn hanging down here, and now you're going to go over and slip that first stitch. Bring the working yarn over the top so you can see that double little stitch there, and then you can start going again. So let me show you on the other side too. So if you are on the knit side, you're still going to have your working yarn hanging down in the front, and you're going to slip that first stitch and bring this over the top. So I don't pull quite as hard when I'm on the knit side like this. That little join wants to sit sort of more on the knit side. And now that's in place. So you can see this creates a double stitch. And I'm just going to work that double stitch like normal, just like it's a single stitch right through the center. And that's what it looks like. Right now it looks a little bit elongated here, but that's going to come out when it's blocked. Okay, I had a few. Here's, that's what an Eastern mount stitch looks like. Has the right leg and back. So if you come to that, I ripped something out. So some of my stitches have an Eastern mount. So when you come to that, all you're going to do is knit through the back loop, and that will make it perfect again. Okay, knit, we know, knit through the back loop. Okay, so usually your stitch is going to be mounted with the right leg in front and the left leg in back if you're a Western style knitter. So knitting through the back loop is going to twist your stitch to the left. So you can see the back loop means the loop that's in back of the needle. So I'm going to stick my needle through there, and you can see right at the base there that there's a little twist. Okay, so what can also happen is if you want to do an SSK, you're going to reposition so that your right leg is in the back and your left leg is in front. And then when you knit two together through the back loop, in other words, the loop that is in back of the needle, that is going to keep your stitch from twisting. So you can see at the base there's no twist. So that is why it's important to know how your stitches are mounted. So knitting through the back loop, some people will say, oh, that always twists the stitch. It doesn't always twist the stitch. It only twists the stitch if your right leg is in front and your left leg is in back. And that's when you're going to get a twisted stitch. Okay, so knit two together. I just have to reposition these because I had an Eastern mount on one. So knit two together is just knitting two together through the front loops. The rest of these mostly are obvious. We have what you see is what you get. So that we talked about on the charts, what you see is what you knit. Talked about that on the charts, and then a yarn over. So when you do a yarn over, you also want the right leg to be in front and the left leg in back. So when you're holding your yarn like this, you're going to do it just like that, so that this leading leg of the yarn over is in front of the needle and that other leg, the left leg, is in back. So when it says yarn over, it is only the yarn over. It's a completely created stitch. It doesn't have anything to do. I've gotten several questions before where people think that a yarn over includes the next knit stitch. It does not. A yarn over is only that hole in your knitting. It just creates a little hole there. And now I'm going to knit the next stitch. So there's your yarn over. Okay. So let's just go down here. Alrighty. So on this, you'll see sort of in the middle. So you'll see up here where you are going to purl and then it just stops. So where it stops, you're just going to turn, and then that stitch above it is a German short row. So I'm going to get to the end and I'm going to show you the little star stitch and what it will look like when you do a German short row in here. Okay, so here is row 18 is the row that is going to go across the entire wedge here, and stop short right over here at the end. So you can see here there are 9 stitches here, and then there's one more stitch here. So that's 10 stitches. And then here is your short row. So these stitches are just going to be left on your needle. You don't have to do anything to them. They're just going to stay there until you bind off. And you can remove that clip-on marker here and replace it over here. Okay, so before that, we have this little area right here. Let me show you what that looks like. This is a really fun old edging that I edited to do this pattern called Horn of Plenty. And this little edge on the bottom here is meant to look like the end of the horn where it kind of curls around. So it creates kind of a curvy little area here rather than a point. So that is what this little star stitch up here is going to create. Okay, and it's written out, but it's easier, I think, to see how it looks when you watch this. Okay, so we're at row 18 here. So I'm going to knit 9, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I've knit 9 stitches, and now I'm going to pass 8 stitches over this final stitch right here. So I'm going to start with the one right next to this first stitch and pass them over one by one. They're going to just get passed over that first stitch there. And this is also in that little short that I have linked from the Ravelry pattern page. And I also actually have it linked on my own site as well. Okay, so you can see here that creates a curve on the side, And then it also creates sort of space there. So it accentuates your yarn over. So later on, it makes that yarn over look like it's much bigger than it is, but it's just a plain yarn over. Okay, so that is this little star stitch right here. That is what it looks like. Okay, so let me just go on, and you can see here what that looks like. It's already, it makes it look a little bit bigger than a yarn over would usually look. Okay, so you're going along here and you come to the end in the chart. So right here, there's that end. So I'm just going to pretend I'm right there, come to that end, and the rest of these stitches, they have a no stitch symbol there. I'm going to turn this over and then do this little symbol here, and that is the German short row symbol. So my yarn is hanging down in front. You always want it to be hanging down in front, even when you're on the right side and you have knit stitches. It's always going to be hanging down in front. Going to slip that first stitch and then take my working yarn, bring it over the top and into place to knit. That's what it's going to look like. It's going to look a little twisted together, but that will mostly disappear. And creates a double stitch. So if you are counting and you keep getting to these and miscounting because of the double stitch, because I can tell you I do it a lot, lots of us do. You might want to just mark this with a clip-on marker, and then you'll remember where that double stitch is. So just beware. If you need to, go ahead and mark that. Okay. So if you're going to go back the other way, I'm just going to do another German short row, even though there aren't any German short rows from knit to purl side in this pattern. Just going to come back this way and show you how to work the German short row. It's just going to be purled. You want to make sure that you get right through the center here. And German short rows are really great for hiding short rows. Okay. So let's talk about the bind off now. So when you get to the bind off, I have had you use a slightly larger needle, and that is because you want this to be able to stretch as much as possible. So this is what the bind off looks like. One of the really cool things about this bind off is once you're done with it, it creates a little tube. And if you use blocking wires, you can insert a blocking wire right through that tube to help you get a nice straight edge. And so that really helps because if you're just using a pin, then you can get like little tiny scallops from using pins across there. So a blocking wire inserted right through the middle is going to make that a super straight edge. And this edge is fairly long. So when you use a blocking wire, just if you're probably going to use 2 or maybe even 3 blocking wires, you're just going to bring the wire out of the tube and stick another one in, and make sure you pin around that area just to keep it nice and smooth across there. Okay, so For the bind off, we're going to do a reverse stockinette stitch I-cord. And I noted in here, if you're getting yarn overs on here, that means you're kind of catching the needle in the way, and that is, and it's not what is meant for this. So let me show you what this looks like. Okay, so I'm going to pretend this is a much larger needle, even though it's not that much larger. So I like to start these with knitted cast on because I can cast on to the needle that I'm going to be binding off with. But I suppose you could also use a backward loop. As long as you cast on to this needle that your other stitches are on, you're going to be fine. So I'm going to cast on 3 stitches using that knitted cast on. And I know this is much easier continental style than it really is to do it here. I'll take one out. It's easier to do it continental style than it is to do it English style, but you still can do it that way. So that was an English style one there. Okay, so now you're going to bring your yarn underneath that needle. You don't want to bring it over because you're going to create an extra loop there. And just to start by purling 2 stitches, and then you're going to purl 2 together. So every time you purl 2 together, you're using one of the body stitches. Once that's purled together, you're going to move your yarn to the back and slip your stitches over. So if you naturally bind off really loosely, you don't necessarily have to use a larger needle, but it really helps just to remember that you want it to be nice and loose. So now my yarn is in back, and I'm going to bring it around and under the tip here. So you can see you do not want to bring it over like that. That's going to create a yarn over. It needs to be under the tip. And you're just going to keep going. So the needle is going to come over the top of that yarn and then into the first stitch. And 2 pearls and a purl 2 together. So when you first do this, it's going to look pretty messy. So let me just do that. I'm going to try that English style. So here is a purl and another purl and purl 2 together. Now my yarn is going to come to the back, and I'm going to slip these back over. So this one I mounted my stitch differently. So I'm going to purl it from the back. Okay, so that next one ought to be okay. Oops. Here we go. Purl, purl, and then purl 2 together. So as you're doing this, you're going to notice that it looks pretty sloppy. So on the back here, look how sloppy that looks. Okay, however, as we go along, let me just get a little bit further on here. As we get along, I'm going to stop and to stretch that out. And you will see that it's kind of magic because it turns into looking like a real I-cord instead of some like weird mutant. Okay, So here's what it looks like on the front so far. That's what it looks like on the back. So you can see those strands of yarn here. So I'm just gonna pull this out. And you can see that that just evens out really well. So on this, you can see that this is really too loose for this particular swatch. But on something like this shawl, because this edge is going to be stretched extra because of all the negative space in here, you can see all of these little yarn overs on here. That is going to make it really important for the I-cord to be as loose, to be looser, because these are going to need a little bit more real estate in order to stretch out more. And then you're just going to go all the way to the end. Um, and super easy, just repeat this all the way to the end, and you are good. Okay, so let's transition back here a little bit. So, how does anyone have any questions about this? I've been kind of watching the comments to see if anyone had a particular question that you want to know about this shawl. And there's one more thing I do want to talk about. In my charts, you can see that there's yellow and white stripes. That is a counting aid. So that it doesn't mean anything except we're going from right to left, and everything is sectioned off in strips of 5 stitches. So as you're going along, it's just easier for you to count. Another thing, okay, so each of these, even though they look a little bit different here, all of these have, there's 12 stitches of what looks like plain right across here, 12, and then there's 12 knit two together, yarn over, knit two together, yarn over. So I'm sorry, there's 12 stitches of that, but there are 6 of that particular motif, even though it looks like they're different numbers across here. These are all repeated different amounts of times. So the other thing, if you are looking at both the written instructions and your chart, you will see that the repeats are not in the same place. However, whichever one of these you choose to work, it will come out the same, even though the repeats are not in the same place. And let's see. So, okay, so awesome. So Judy and Sue, definitely make notes if you come across something that that is suspect or you don't like you want to ask questions about, and let me know. And when I go live, I can show you visually, and I could probably just tell you also when you ask. But yeah, so hopefully like that covers everything in here. Okay. Oh, one more thing. Um, okay. So these rows 1 and 2, those are the setup rows. So you can see up here the instructions: work rows 1 and 2, then work rows 3 through 20, a total of 9 or 11 times. So my smaller shawl has a 10 total wedges. My larger shawl has 12 total wedges. So what you're doing is you're working rows 3 through 20, one fewer times than the wedges, the number of wedges that you want. Then after that, you're going to work rows 3 through 17. So the reason that I set the chart up this way is so you could see how the next wedge will line up with your previous wedge. So when you go back, you're only going to work those first 2 rows once. And then after that, it's all right up above here in the rest. Okay, let's see. Okay, just want to make sure that I've got everybody's questions answered. Alrighty, so you can see I've numbered the markers. However, um, and some people I know have numbered markers. They don't necessarily have to be numbered markers. I just numbered them because then they're a little bit easier to keep track of. And you may notice as you're going along here that so there are two short rows per little area that's marked in here. One of them is always going to be right at the end of that marked area. And then the second one is always going to be right at the end here of this patterning. So that actually means that as you're going along, your short rows are going to start getting closer together. So that's okay. It's not an error. Um, that is because the short rows look really weird in the middle of this, um, like the patterning here. So what we're doing is just building a a wedge shape, and basically blocking it into its final shape. And that's possible because of all this negative space in this area, and also because this is knit at kind of a larger gauge than what the ball band says. So it's really malleable. So one really cool thing about lace is how malleable it is. So you can just stretch it into different shapes, and when you block it, it will stay there for you. So there you go. Okay. So let me transition back here. I do have another kind of fun thing to show you. So I was working on this. I'm doing houndstooth mitts, and it has a loop stitch in the bottom here. And it looks a little bit like a Muppet pelt. So I'm a Muppet fan. Let me show you this up close. That's what it looks like up close. And I just saw this pair of mitts that had a fur cuff, and decided I needed some mitts with a Muppet pelt on them. So these are coming up, and that is just doing the sample now, and this is going to be the next pattern in my oddments, that one oddment a month. Okay, and I'm a huge fan of houndstooth. I just think it's really fun. Okay, so I am going to show you how to do this loop stitch. It's very fun. Um, I'm just going to knit across my I-cord here. Okay, so for a loop stitch, let me clear this out of the way so you can actually see this, and there's nothing behind it. Okay, all cleared out of the way. Alrighty, so a loop stitch. In these cuffs, there is a loop for every stitch on 5 rounds, and in between each of the loopy rounds, there is a purl round. Um, so here is how you do the loop stitch. So I'll show you continental first. There are going to be 2 stitches knit into this stitch right here. So I knit 1, and now I'm going to bring my yarn forward in between my 2 needles. I'm going to put my finger there in the way and bring the yarn back. So I have the yarn around my finger. So I can actually kind of pull that out or do whatever I want to. Right now, I can still adjust it. So if I need a little bit more extra room to see what I'm doing here, I can just kind of pull that out, stick my needle in. So once the the second stitch goes into this origin stitch, it's going to be a lot more difficult to adjust. So I'm just going to pull that tight around my finger and then make another knit stitch here. So now I have a knit, a loop, and a knit into one stitch. And I'm going to hold my loop down and take that first stitch I made into that one stitch and put it over the top of the second stitch. And here's my loop. Okay. So now if I were going to do this English style, I would do my knit stitch, bring this forward. I mean, basically same thing. I'm just going to use my other finger because it's easier and bring that back. And now I'm going to do a second stitch into the same origin stitch. Second knit stitch. I think I'm going to sort of make it a little bit tighter. I'm going to put that second stitch in there, and now the origin stitch comes off. I'm going to hold that down again with my thumb so the loop doesn't get deformed or smaller or larger or anything, and then I slipped that first stitch over the second one. So that is what it looks like. So these are, you can still sort of adjust them a little bit, but they're pretty much locked into place once you have that first stitch over the second stitch like that. So when you have a bunch of them like that, like this, um, they're they look like they would be a lot more fragile than they are, but in reality, they stay put pretty well. So, and they're really fun. Like I love the loops. They, they look like a Muppet, and I love Muppets. So there you go. Okay, let's see. Question. Um, so Marianne asked if my shawls were tested continental style only. I actually don't ask. Um, I I think I think my testers, well, one of my testers is a left-handed knitter. And so she knits like she knits instead of knitting onto her right needle from her left needle, she knits from her right needle onto her left needle. And so she's like um, a mirror, like an exact mirror of my knitting. So I guess sort of continental, except that she is left-handed. But it's been kind of fun. Like sometimes I get a video of her knitting and mirror it, and it looks like me knitting. So like we had some fun going back and forth. And then I think another of my test knitters is continental, but I don't know, and it doesn't really matter. It's just the hand that you hold your yarn in. So doesn't really matter. So let's see. So Terry said, what cast on did you use for the loops? So it's not actually a cast on. Do you mean for the mitt that I'm knitting, what cast on did I use? Or just for the loop itself? So here for this, so here is what I did at the bottom of the mitt here. So I cast on, and I just wanted this to curl under. So what I did was I just cast on regularly with a knitted cast on, and then I worked 2 rows back and forth. And when you join after working back and forth, it's much easier to join without twisting the cast on. So later on, I'm going to take this yarn tail here and just sew up the bottom here. And so the bottom of the cuff just has a little, it just rolls underneath. So it rolls underneath the loop so you can't really see it all that much. So just any cast on you really want. You can use whichever your favorite cast on is. So for the loops themselves, there is no cast on involved. So what you're going to do is you're just going to make two knit stitches into one stitch with a loop in the middle. So it's knit stitch, bring yarn in between the two needles, wrap around your finger, back the other way. And I've seen some people use their thumb, but I just can't seem to get that. My thumb doesn't want to cooperate. And then just another stitch in that same stitch there. And I'm going to hold the loop down and then pass the second stitch in over the first stitch. And so no cast on involved in making a single loop. Okay, so Mary Ann says, on my Rose of the Aegean, I find myself flipping stitches sometimes. Okay. Um, so I don't know necessarily what's happening with that, but it's possible that you may be using, sometimes you use an Eastern pearl, possibly. Um, that's a possibility. And so if we add extra beads, will it outstretch the shawl? No, it should be fine. I mean, unless you're going to use like tons and tons and tons of extra beads in there. I would say you could double the beads or maybe even triple them and be completely fine, especially if it's like a silk yarn or something that's not super stretchy, that like strong but not really stretchy. It should be totally fine. You're good. Okay. So, I kind of did like I didn't really go into a lot of techniques today from my reels that I do on Instagram because I had the shawl to go over. But next week I will have double the fun. So I'll have a like super technique heavy one next week. So if anybody has any questions or particular things you would like to see, I would be happy to show those as well. So if you think of something later on, like if you start doing the shawl and then you're like, oh, what on earth was she talking about? Write to me and I will cover that as well. And then I'm going to be working on my other one here. This is my start with the Julie's yarn, and it's like it's a lighter yarn, but it's just really lovely. It comes out really nice, even though it's a really lighter yarn. So actually, I'm going to show you up close here. So even though it's much lighter, I really like it's really fuzzy, so I really like the way that it is coming out. So I'll have more of that I can show you. And then a couple of people I've seen a picture on Ravelry of some people having a couple of wedges done and it looks really nice. So if you haven't seen those, definitely take a look. And yeah, so I think that is it for today. There are, let's see, today's the 7th. There's a few more days left of my birthday sale. So 50% off on Ravelry and my own designsbyromi.com site for all my self-published patterns with the code BDAYBEBE, BEBE 50. So BDAYBEBE 50, half off through December 10th. And because this I'm not going to take this down off the YouTube, off my channel. This is 2023. So, but I do have the sale every year. So even if you're watching next year or a couple of years from now, I will probably still be having a birthday sale. Okie dokie. Okay. So, oh, Judy says, I use the Eastern Pearl stitch on the bottom of a sweater and knit one, purl one, ribbing. It looks so much better. Yes. Oh gosh, yes. I always use Eastern Pearl on ribbing. It looks so much better. I totally am there with you. It looks beautiful. Um, love the way that it looks. It tightens everything up and it makes it really neat and tidy. Love it. Alrighty. Well, thank you everybody for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I'll be back next week. So don't be a stranger. Let me know if there's anything that you want to hear from me or see or have demonstrated. And I'm happy to do it. So thank you again for joining me. Um, take good care. If you're watching this later and you're not in the chat and everything, please like and subscribe. It helps me get out to more people. And yeah, that would be great. So I'll see you next week. Thank you for joining me again and take care, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.